Critical Thinking in Modern Relationships, A Journey of Growth. Prologue, The Awakening. The September rain tapped gently against the windows of the high-rise office building, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted sharply with the chaos in Olivia Chen's mind. She sat at her desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and data visualizations, staring at the email that had just landed in her inbox. Team lead position. Your interview feedback. With trembling fingers, she opened the message, though she already knew what it would say. The words blurred together, but one phrase stood out clearly. While your analytical skills are exceptional, we have concerns about your ability to lead and connect with the team. Olivia closed her laptop with a soft click and leaned back in her chair, letting out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. At 32, she had spent the last decade building her career as a data analyst, priding herself on her ability to find patterns in chaos and transform numbers into meaningful insights. Yet here she was, being told that the very precision that made her excellent at her job was somehow a barrier to advancement. The office had mostly emptied for the day, but through the glass walls of her cubicle, she could see Marcus, one of her colleagues, still engaged in animated conversation with two team members. She found herself analyzing their interaction like one of her data sets. Marcus's open body language, the way he leaned in slightly when others spoke, how he seamlessly wove humor and empathy into technical discussions. "What's your secret?" she whispered to herself, watching as the small group burst into laughter over something Marcus had said. Her own attempts at workplace connection often felt forced, like she was following a script written in a language she only partially understood. The next morning, seeking refuge from her thoughts, Olivia found herself at the Daily Grind, her favorite coffee shop. It was a place where she could observe people without the pressure of interaction, a habit she developed over years of feeling like an outsider in social situations. "Your usual vanilla latte with an extra shot?" Sarah, the barista, asked with a warmth that always made Olivia wonder how someone could maintain such genuine enthusiasm for every customer. "Yes, please," Olivia replied, then hesitated before adding, "Sarah, how do you do it? Make everyone feel so comfortable?" Sarah looked surprised by the question, but pleased. It's funny you asked that. I actually think about it a lot, like a puzzle almost. Each person who comes in is different, so I try to read their cues and adjust accordingly. Some want conversation, others just need their coffee and a smile. It's kind of like solving a new equation each time. Olivia's analyst brain perked up at this unexpected parallel. "You mean you analyze people's behavior?" "In a way," Sarah laughed, steaming milk for Olivia's latte. "Though it's less about analysis and more about observation and adjustment. But now that you mention it, I suppose I do have a sort of mental flowchart for different types of interactions." As Olivia settled into her usual corner table, Sarah's words echoed in her mind. She pulled out her notebook, a habit she couldn't shake even outside the office, and began to write. What if relationships aren't as unpredictable as they seem? What if the same analytical skills I use with data could be applied to understanding people? Variables to consider: communication patterns, emotional responses, environmental factors, personal history, cultural context. She stopped writing abruptly, almost embarrassed by her instinct to quantify human interaction. But something about this approach felt right, like finding a new way to read a familiar but challenging text. Through the window, she watched people hurrying through the morning rush, each interaction a data point in an enormous social experiment. A businessman held the door for a woman with a stroller, their brief exchange of smiles and thanks a perfect example of unspoken social protocols. Two friends greeted each other with an intricate handshake, their familiarity evident in their synchronized movements. Her phone buzzed, a message from her younger sister. "Lunch this weekend? I miss you." Olivia felt the familiar anxiety that accompanied social invitations, even from family. But instead of her usual non-committal response, she paused, considering this as an opportunity to test her emerging hypothesis about applying critical thinking to relationships. "This could be my laboratory," she murmured, looking around the coffee shop with new eyes. Every interaction, every relationship, they're all patterns waiting to be understood. She opened her notebook again, this time writing with purpose. Project parameters. Objective: Apply analytical skills to improve relationship building. Hypothesis. Critical thinking can enhance, rather than hinder social connections. Method. Systematic observation and analysis of successful social interactions. Expected challenges. Breaking old patterns. Managing anxiety. Maintaining authenticity. First step. Accept sister's lunch invitation. Establish baseline for family interactions. As she wrote, Olivia felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced since her early days of data analysis. This wasn't just about getting a promotion or fitting in at office parties anymore. It was about discovering a new way to bridge the gap between her analytical nature and the human connection she yearned for. Sarah appeared with a refill, noticing Olivia's intense focus. Having a breakthrough moment? I think I am, Olivia replied, looking up with a small smile. I'm realizing that maybe being analytical isn't the problem. Maybe I've just been analyzing the wrong things in the wrong way. As she gathered her things to head to work, Olivia felt lighter somehow. The rain had stopped, and sunlight was breaking through the clouds. She had spent years trying to suppress her analytical nature in social situations, believing it was an obstacle to genuine connection. But perhaps it was time to embrace it instead, to use her greatest strength as a tool for understanding the most complex data set of all, human relationships. This was just the beginning. Through the lens of critical thinking, she would learn to navigate the intricacies of human interaction, one relationship at a time. The analyst in her was ready to tackle her greatest challenge yet, understanding the human heart, including her own. Chapter 1. Understanding the Foundations, When Logic Meets Connection. The morning after her coffee shop epiphany, Olivia arrived at her office earlier than usual. The quiet of the pre-workday hours felt perfect for beginning her analysis. She opened a fresh document on her computer, titling it Relationship Analysis Framework, Initial Observations. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she watched the early arrivals trickle in. Marcus, as usual, was among the first. She observed how he moved through the office space, noting how he acknowledged each person differently. A cheerful good morning to Jessica at reception, a quiet nod to Alex from accounting, who famously needed his first coffee before any interaction, and a brief but engaged conversation with Chun from IT about a weekend basketball game. It's like he has a mental database of everyone's preferences, Olivia murmured to herself, fingers flying across the keyboard as she documented these observations. She had always dismissed such behavior as natural charisma, something you either had or didn't. But watching Marcus now, through her analyst lens, she began to see patterns and intentional choices. During the morning team meeting, Olivia found herself paying attention to different details than usual. Instead of focusing solely on the project metrics being discussed, she noted how her colleagues interacted. Rachel, the project manager, consistently used people's names when addressing them, creating immediate engagement. Tom, usually quiet in meetings, became animated when others build upon his ideas, suggesting that acknowledgement was key to his participation. Even the seating arrangements seemed to tell a story about office relationships and team dynamics. After the meeting, Olivia gathered her courage and approached Marcus as he refilled his coffee in the break room. "Marcus, do you have a minute?" she asked, clutching her notebook like a shield. He turned with his characteristic easy smile. "For you? Always. What's on your mind?" "I noticed how you interact differently with everyone in the office," she began, then rushed ahead before she lost her nerve. "How do you know how to approach each person? Do you consciously think about it?" Marcus looked surprised but pleased by the question. He settled against the counter, considering his response. It's interesting you ask that. As an introvert myself, dash." "Wait," Olivia interrupted. "You're an introvert?" He laughed. "Hard to believe, right? But yes, I had to learn to read people and situations. It's like solving a puzzle. You gather information, test approaches, and adjust based on results." "Actually," he added, eyes lighting up, "it's probably a lot like what you do with data analysis." This comparison stopped Olivia in her tracks. She had always seen her analytical nature as separate from, even opposed to, social skills. But what if Marcus was right? What if the same principles could apply? That evening, instead of heading straight home, Olivia returned to the daily grind. The coffee shop's evening crowd was different from the morning rush. creating a new set of social dynamics to observe. She settled into her corner table and opened her notebook. Core critical thinking principles applied to relationships. Observation before conclusion. Traditional data analysis begins with gathering information before forming hypotheses. Similarly, successful social interactions seem to start with careful observation of others' cues and preferences. Pattern recognition. Just as data reveals patterns over time, people demonstrate consistent behavioral patterns in different contexts. Understanding these patterns can guide interaction strategies. Hypothesis testing. In data analysis, we test theories before drawing conclusions. Social interactions can be approached the same way, trying different approaches and noting results. Continuous adjustment. Like any good analysis, social strategies need regular refinement based on new information and changing circumstances. As she wrote, Olivia noticed a group of friends at a nearby table. Their easy laughter and comfortable silence speaking of long-established relationships. She began to analyze their interaction patterns. They took turns speaking with natural transitions. Body language mirrored each other unconsciously. Inside jokes were shared but explained to include everyone. Disagreements were handled with humor and respect. Sarah appeared with a fresh cup of tea. More research? She asked, nodding at Olivia's notebook. Something like that, Olivia replied. I'm trying to understand how people build and maintain connections. It's fascinating how some groups just seem to flow together. Sarah glanced at the group Olivia had been observing. You know what I've noticed about them? They come here every Thursday, and each week their dynamic is a little different depending on what's happening in their lives. But they always adjust to support whoever needs it most that day. It's like they have an unspoken understanding. This observation sparked something in Olivia's mind. She quickly added to her notes. Relationship dynamics. Not static, evolve based on circumstances. Require active maintenance and adjustment. Built on accumulated shared experiences. Involve mutual support and understanding. Her phone buzzed, a reminder about lunch with her sister tomorrow. Instead of her usual anxiety, Olivia felt a surge of curiosity. This would be her first opportunity to consciously apply her developing framework to a personal relationship. She began preparing as she would for any important analysis. Baseline assessment, sister relationship, current status. Somewhat distant, communication primarily through text, historical patterns. Monthly catch-up attempts, often rescheduled, variables to consider. Shared family history, different life paths and priorities. Communication style differences, past interaction successes/failures. Hypothesis. More intentional observation and adjustment of interaction patterns could improve relationship quality. Test method. Tomorrow's lunch, focus on observing sisters' communication cues, testing different conversation approaches, noting emotional responses, both hers and mine, identifying potential patterns for future interaction. As she finished writing, Olivia realized something profound. She had always seen her analytical nature as a wall between herself and others. But perhaps it could be a bridge instead, a way to understand and build connections that felt authentic to who she was. The coffee shop was quieting as the evening wound down. The group of friends had left, but their laughter seemed to linger in the air, a reminder of what was possible when people truly connected. Sarah began her closing routine, wiping down tables with practiced efficiency. You know, she said, pausing by Olivia's table, sometimes understanding comes from unexpected places. Maybe being analytical about relationships isn't about reducing them to data points. It's about using the tools you already have to build something meaningful. Olivia nodded, closing her notebook thoughtfully. Tomorrow's lunch with her sister would be the first test of her new approach. She felt both nervous and excited, the same way she felt before diving into a particularly challenging data set. As she walked home through the quiet evening streets, Olivia reflected on how much had changed in just 2 days. She had spent years thinking she needed to become a different person to connect with others. Now she was beginning to see that the key might lie in being more fully herself, in using her natural analytical abilities in a new way. The streetlights cast long shadows on the sidewalk, and Olivia smiled, thinking about all the patterns and connections waiting to be discovered. This was just the beginning of her journey into understanding the complex data set of human relationships. And for the first time in years, she felt truly optimistic about where it might lead. Chapter 2. The Art of Observation. Learning to Read Between the Lines. The Saturday morning sun streamed through the windows of Café Luna, where Olivia sat waiting for her sister, Emma. She had arrived 20 minutes early, not just from her usual anxiety about being late, but to intentionally observe the social dynamics around her before the emotional complexity of family interaction came into play. Her notebook lay open before her. Social observation exercise, pre-meeting analysis. Location, Café Luna. Time, 10:40 a.m., weekend brunch crowd. Objective, study successful social interactions before sister arrives. At the table next to her, a couple was clearly on their first or second date. Olivia found herself analyzing their interaction with newfound interest. The woman's shoulders were slightly tense, her coffee cup acting as a subtle barrier between them. The man leaned forward perhaps too eagerly, his rapid speech suggesting nervousness beneath attempted confidence. "Olivia!" Emma's voice cut through her observations. Her sister stood before her, looking exactly like and nothing like her simultaneously. They shared the same dark hair and angular features, but where Olivia's posture spoke of careful restraint, Emma radiated spontaneous energy. "You're early," Emma said, sliding into the seat across from her. "That's new." Olivia closed her notebook, conscious of how her sister's arrival immediately shifted her own body language. Shoulders slightly raised, hands clasped tightly. "I wanted to get some work done," she said, the familiar white lie slipping out automatically. But then she remembered her mission. Actually, she corrected herself, I was people watching, trying to understand different interaction patterns. Emma's eyebrows rose in surprise at this unexpected honesty. "Really? That sounds more like something I would do. Though probably for different reasons," she added with a laugh. This small moment of connection encouraged Olivia. She decided to push further, applying her new observational framework to their interaction. She consciously relaxed her shoulders, noting how Emma's posture subtly mirrored the change. "How do you do it?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious. "You've always been so good at connecting with people." Emma stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "I don't know if I'm good at it so much as I'm not afraid to be bad at it," she said finally. "I mess up, say the wrong thing, but I keep trying. People respond to that authenticity more than perfection." This insight struck Olivia deeply. In her data analysis work, perfection was achievable, even expected. But human interaction wasn't about perfection. It was about pattern recognition and adjustment. Throughout their brunch, Olivia practiced conscious observation while maintaining conversation. Emma's voice rose slightly when talking about her art gallery work, indicating genuine passion. She used her hands more when describing emotional situations. Her eye contact increased when asking about Olivia's life, showing sincere interest. Slight tension appeared around her mouth when their parents were mentioned. "You're different today," Emma noted as they were finishing their meals. "More present somehow. Usually I feel like you're mentally somewhere else when we talk." Olivia considered deflecting, but instead chose honesty. "I'm trying something new, learning to really observe and understand interactions instead of just getting through them." Emma's face softened. "That sounds very you. Using analysis to build connection. I like it." The following week at work, Olivia expanded her observational practice. She created a simple framework for noting different types of workplace interactions. Morning greetings. Successful patterns included brief but genuine eye contact, name use, and acknowledgement of personal details. Less successful attempts often involved generic greetings without real engagement. Meeting dynamics. Effective communicators modulated their tone and pace based on audience response. Body language often revealed more than words about agreement or disagreement. Silence could indicate either engagement or disconnection. Context was crucial. One Tuesday morning, Olivia decided to test her growing observational skills. Instead of her usual quick hello to Jessica at reception, she paused, noting the family photo recently added to Jessica's desk. "Is that your new grandson?" Olivia asked, remembering a conversation she'd overheard last week. Jessica's face lit up. "Yes, Would you like to see more pictures? What would normally have been a brief exchange turned into a warm 5-minute conversation. Olivia noticed how Jessica's body language became more animated as she shared stories, how her smile reached her eyes in a way it hadn't during their previous interactions. Later that day, during a team meeting, Olivia found herself picking up on subtleties she would have missed before. When Tom from accounting presented his quarterly report, she noticed his confidence increased when people maintained eye contact. He responded positively to nodding and small verbal affirmations. His pace slowed when he sensed confusion in his audience. His shoulders tensed when interrupted. After the meeting, Olivia approached Tom. "Great presentation," she said, then added, remembering Emma's words about authenticity. "I noticed how clearly you explained the complex parts. It really helped me understand the bigger picture." Tom's surprise and pleasure at this specific feedback were evident in his brightened expression and more relaxed posture. This small success encouraged Olivia to continue her observations and experiments in social interaction. That evening, she returned to the daily grind to compile her notes and reflect on her progress. Sarah, now familiar with Olivia's research, brought her usual order with a knowing smile. "How's the people watching project going?" Sarah asked, taking advantage of the quiet evening lull to chat. "It's fascinating," Olivia replied, surprising herself with her enthusiasm. "I'm starting to see patterns I never noticed before. It's like learning a new language. At first, it's all noise, but gradually you start to recognize words and phrases." Sarah nodded. "You know what I've noticed about you? You're becoming more comfortable with the observation itself. When you first started, you seemed almost guilty about watching people. Now you're more natural with it." This observation about her observation made Olivia smile. She opened her notebook to a fresh page. Key Learnings, Week 2. 1. Observation isn't just about gathering data. It's about understanding context. 2. People communicate on multiple levels simultaneously: verbal, physical, emotional. 3. Authentic interest generates authentic responses. 4. Patterns exist but must be verified through interaction. 5. Comfort with observation leads to better engagement. As she wrote, Olivia noticed a young woman at a nearby table displaying clear signs of distress, repeatedly checking her phone, fidgeting with her cup, blinking back tears. Before her recent studies in social observation, Olivia would have ignored this, feeling uncomfortable with others' emotional displays. Now, however, she saw it differently. The woman's body language was practically crying out for connection, even as she tried to maintain composure in public. Taking a deep breath, Olivia stood and approached the woman's table. "Excuse me," she said gently, "would you like some company? Or maybe just a fresh cup of coffee?" The woman looked up, startled, then gave a watery smile. "Company would be nice, actually. I've just got some difficult news, and I don't really want to be alone right now." As Olivia sat down, she realized that all her careful observation had led to this moment. Not just analyzing patterns, but using that understanding to reach out and connect when it mattered. She caught Sarah's approving glance from behind the counter and felt a warm glow of progress. The evening unfolded into an unexpected lesson in emotional connection, proving that sometimes the most valuable observations come not from studying others, but from allowing ourselves to be present in moments of genuine human interaction. Chapter 3. Analysis and Action, Breaking Down the Social Code. Olivia stared at her computer screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard as she debated how to respond to an email from Rachel, her project manager. A month ago, she would have fired back a quick, fact-based response to Rachel's request for project updates. But now, after weeks of studying social interactions, she saw the layers beneath the simple request. Reading between the lines, she murmured, opening her observation notebook. Rachel's email, while professional, contained subtle cues. Multiple exclamation points, unusual for Rachel. References to team effort rather than individual tasks. A personal note about looking forward to their next meeting. Sent at 7:30 p.m., well after normal office hours. Olivia leaned back in her chair, analyzing these elements. Rachel wasn't just asking for updates. She was reaching out, perhaps feeling pressure from above, seeking reassurance as much as information. The data suggests a different approach is needed, Olivia wrote in her notebook. Instead of her usual bullet-pointed status report, she crafted a response that acknowledged both the explicit and implicit messages. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for checking in. I understand how important this timeline is for the team. I've attached the detailed progress report, but I wanted to highlight that we're actually ahead of schedule on the key metrics you mentioned in last week's meeting. I know these end-of-quarter reports can be stressful. Would you like to grab coffee tomorrow morning to go through everything in detail? Best. Olivia. Her finger hovered over the send button. The invitation to coffee felt risky, a departure from their usual strictly professional interactions. But her analysis suggested this was the right move. Within minutes, Rachel replied, "Coffee would be wonderful. Thank you, Olivia. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness on this." The next morning, as they sat in the office cafe, Olivia watched Rachel's tension visibly ease as they discussed the project. When Rachel mentioned pressure from the executive team, Olivia recognized an opportunity to deepen the professional relationship. "It must be challenging," she offered, managing expectations from both above and below. Rachel looked surprised, then relieved at the acknowledgement. "It is. Sometimes I feel like I'm speaking two different languages, trying to translate between the executive vision and team realities. Like being a human API," Olivia said without thinking, then cringed at her technical reference. But Rachel laughed. "Exactly. I didn't know you thought about things this way, Olivia. You always seemed so focused on the data." "I'm learning to analyze more than just numbers," Olivia admitted. "People are complex data sets, too." This conversation marked a turning point in their working relationship. Over the next few weeks, Olivia began applying her analytical framework to more challenging social situations. She created what she called her social analysis matrix. Context plus pattern recognition plus response testing equals improved interactions. She tested this approach during a particularly tense team meeting where two departments disagreed on project priorities. Instead of retreating into silence, as she usually would, Olivia observed. Context: marketing team frustrated by technical constraints. Development team feeling unappreciated. Both sides using increasingly defensive language. Patterns: each team using their own jargon. Missing key opportunities for compromise. Body language showing increasing tension. Based on this analysis, Olivia took a calculated risk. She stood up and walked to the whiteboard. "May I try something?" she asked. When the room quieted, she drew a simple diagram showing how the two teams' goals overlapped. "What if we looked at it this way?" To her surprise, both teams leaned forward with interest. She had translated their conflict into a visual language everyone could understand. The meeting shifted from confrontation to collaboration. Later that afternoon, Marcus stopped by her desk. "That was impressive," he said. "You've really been working on this people thing, haven't you?" Olivia smiled. "I'm approaching it like any other analysis project. Observe, gather data, test hypotheses. But with heart," Marcus added. "That's the difference I'm seeing. You're not just analyzing, you're understanding." His words stayed with her as she headed to the daily grind that evening. Sarah was training a new barista, and Olivia found herself automatically analyzing their interaction. The trainee showed signs of anxiety. Rush movements, apologetic tone, minimal eye contact. Sarah's response pattern: calm, measured instructions, positive reinforcement, physical demonstration rather than just verbal direction, strategic use of humor to ease tension. "Your usual?" Sarah called out as Olivia approached the counter. "Yes, please," Olivia replied, then added, "You're really good at training. The way you adjusted your teaching style to match his learning style, it was fascinating to watch." Sarah beamed. "You really have learned to see these things, haven't you? Remember when you first started coming in? You barely made eye contact when ordering." Olivia felt herself blush. Was I that obvious? To someone who pays attention? Yes. But that's not a bad thing. It's just data, right? Something clicked in Olivia's mind. She pulled out her notebook and wrote, "Past behavior equals historical data. Current efforts equals system updates. Future interactions equals predicted outcomes based on new algorithms." She was starting to see how her past social challenges weren't failures. They were simply data points that could inform better future interactions. That evening, She received an unexpected message from Emma. "Dinner at my place this weekend? Bringing someone I'd like you to meet." Normally, the prospect of meeting new people would have sent Olivia into an anxiety spiral. Instead, she found herself analyzing the opportunity. Current variables. Comfortable setting, Emma's home. Small group dynamics. Built-in conversation topic, Emma's connection to guest. Potential strategies. Prepare open-ended questions. Use observation skills to read guests' comfort level. Apply successful patterns from work interactions. Allow for authentic moments of connection. She typed a reply, "I'd love to. What can I bring?" As she set down her phone, Olivia realized how much had changed in the past month. She was no longer just observing social interactions. She was actively participating in them, using her analytical skills not as a shield, but as a bridge to deeper connections. The next morning, she arrived at work early to find a coffee cup on her desk. A note from Rachel read, "Thanks for being such a great team member. Your insights yesterday really made a difference." Olivia smiled, adding this data point to her growing collection of evidence that understanding people wasn't about suppressing her analytical nature. It was about applying it in a way that created meaningful connections. She opened her notebook to a fresh page, ready to document new observations and insights. The social world was still complex, still sometimes overwhelming, but now she had a framework for understanding it. Each interaction was an opportunity to gather data, test theories, and most importantly, to grow. Chapter 4. Testing Social Hypotheses, From Theory to Practice. The invitation sat on Olivia's desk like a ticking time bomb. Annual company team building retreat, building bridges together. In previous years, she had managed to avoid this event through carefully timed project deadlines or convenient family obligations. But this year was different. This year, she had a hypothesis to test. She opened her analysis notebook. Hypothesis. Team-building events, while uncomfortable, provide concentrated data on group dynamics and relationship building. Test environment. 2-day retreat at Mountain Lake Resort. Variables to control. Personal anxiety levels. Natural tendency to withdraw. Overanalysis paralysis. Expected challenges. Sustained social interaction. Unstructured social time. Group activities, potentially physical. Planning your escape route already? Marcus's voice made her jump. He perched on the edge of her desk, glancing at her notes with amusement. "Actually," Olivia replied, closing her notebook, "I'm planning to attend this year." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "Really? This I have to see. You know there's usually trust falls involved, right?" Olivia felt her stomach clench, but forced a smile. "I'm aware. I'm treating it as a research opportunity." "Of course you are," Marcus laughed. "Well, if you want a friendly face in your research population, I'll be there." The day of the retreat arrived with perfect autumn weather and Olivia's carefully packed bag of supplies, including her observation notebook, 3 backup pens, anti-anxiety medication just in case, comfortable clothes for all possible activities, a book as social camouflage if needed. As the company bus wound its way up the mountain roads, Olivia began her first experiment. Instead of her usual retreat to a solitary seat with headphones, she sat near the middle of the bus and kept her ears open to conversations around her. She noticed how different groups formed naturally. The marketing team clustered near the front, energy high. IT gathered at the back, sharing jokes and tech jargon. Middle management scattered throughout, building informal bridges. When they arrived at the resort, Olivia forced herself to join a group walking to the main lodge rather than hurrying ahead alone. She tested a technique she'd been practicing, asking open-ended questions about neutral topics. "The architecture here is interesting," she commented to Amy from marketing. "It reminds me of those old national park lodges." To her surprise, this simple observation sparked an engaging discussion about national parks, drawing in several other colleagues. Olivia noted mentally, shared observations about immediate surroundings equals effective conversation starter. The first organized activity was indeed a series of trust-building exercises. Olivia's heart raced as she watched the demonstrations, but she remembered her hypothesis about social growth requiring controlled discomfort. When it came time to pair up, she took a deep breath and volunteered instead of waiting to be chosen. Her partner was James from accounting, someone she'd barely spoken to despite working on the same floor for 2 years. As they went through the exercises, Olivia applied her observation skills. James showed signs of nervousness, slight tremor in hands, nervous laughter, rushed speech. Rather than withdraw into her own anxiety, she tested another hypothesis. Shared vulnerability creates connection. I'm a bit nervous about this, she admitted quietly. Heights aren't really my thing. James's relief was visible. Oh, thank God, me too. I was trying to act cool about it. This small moment of honesty transformed their interaction. They completed the exercises with shared laughter and mutual support, each step feeling less daunting than the last. During the afternoon break, Olivia retreated to a quiet corner of the lodge to update her notes. Initial findings. 1. Voluntary participation yields better results than forced interaction. 2. Shared vulnerability creates faster connections than maintained distance. 3. Genuine interest in others often reciprocated. 4. Social energy requires management, but not complete avoidance. Still collecting data? Sarah's voice startled her. She looked up to find a new HR director standing nearby, with 2 cups of coffee. Mind if I join you? I've been hoping to chat, Sarah continued, offering one of the cups. I've noticed some changes in your interaction patterns lately. Olivia accepted the coffee, analyzing this development. The HR director had sought her out specifically. This required careful navigation. I've been working on my communication skills, Olivia said carefully. Working on them? Sarah smiled. From what I've observed, you've been revolutionizing them. That intervention in last week's cross-department meeting? Brilliant. Very few people can bridge technical and interpersonal gaps like that. Olivia blinked, surprised by this assessment. I've just been applying analytical principles to social interactions. Exactly. Sarah leaned forward enthusiastically. That's what makes it unique. You're not trying to become someone else. You're using your natural strengths in a new way. We have a leadership development program starting next month. I think you'd be perfect for it. This was not a hypothesis Olivia had been prepared to test. Leadership? Her? But as she considered the data from the past few months, improved team dynamics, successful conflict resolution, stronger relationships, she realized Sarah might be onto something. That evening, during the group dinner, Olivia decided to push her experiments further. Instead of choosing a quiet table on the periphery, she joined a lively group from mixed departments. She observed the conversation patterns. Topics flowed naturally between work and personal life. Humor served as a social lubricant. Stories drew others into the conversation. Active listeners encouraged deeper sharing. Drawing on her accumulated data, she waited for a natural opening and shared a brief, funny story about her morning commute. The positive response, genuine laughter, follow-up questions, similar stories shared, confirmed another hypothesis. Calculated social risks often yield positive returns. Later, as people gathered around the outdoor fire pit, Marcus found her again. So, how's the research going? He asked, offering her a marshmallow for toasting. Olivia considered the question carefully. It's producing unexpected results. I started this thinking I needed to crack some kind of social code, but I'm finding that maybe it's more about permission. Permission? Permission to be myself while connecting with others. Permission to use my analytical skills instead of hiding them. Permission to be uncomfortable sometimes and keep trying anyway. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. You know what the best part is? Your experiments are affecting others too. I've noticed people approaching you differently, not just for technical help anymore, but for perspective. You're creating a new pattern. As the firelight flickered and conversations hummed around them, Olivia opened her notebook one last time that day. Updated hypothesis. Effective social connection doesn't require becoming a different person. It requires understanding and leveraging who you already are. Further testing required. Leadership potential. Sustained relationship building. Balance between analysis and intuition. Integration of personal and professional growth. She closed the notebook, looking up at the stars visible through the mountain air. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more data points, more opportunities for connection. But for now, she had proved her most important hypothesis. Change was possible while staying true to herself. Chapter 5. The emotional component, when data meets feelings. The email from her mother arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between meeting reminders and project updates. Family dinner this Sunday. Your father's birthday. Everyone will be there. Please come, Olivia. It's been too long. Olivia felt her chest tighten as she stared at the screen. Family gatherings had always been her greatest social challenge. A complex web of history, expectations, and unspoken dynamics that defied her usual analytical approach. Opening her notebook, she began a new entry. Challenge: family dinner analysis. Known variables. Parents' expectations of normal social behavior. Sister Emma's new relationship to be introduced. Extended family dynamics. Historical patterns of miscommunication. Emotional factors, new category. Anxiety about past interactions. Desire for approval. Frustration with perceived judgment. Genuine love despite difficulties. She paused, pen hovering over the page. This was the first time she'd explicitly included emotional factors in her analysis. The past few months of social observation had taught her that emotions couldn't be ignored or rationalized away. They were vital data points in understanding human interaction. A chat notification popped up on her screen. Coffee? It was Marcus. Minutes later, they sat in the office cafe, steam rising from their cups. Family stuff? Marcus asked, noting her distracted expression. Is it that obvious? Olivia sighed. I've been making progress with professional relationships, even casual social interactions. But family, it's different. There's too much emotional data to process. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. You know what I've noticed about your approach? You're brilliant at analyzing patterns, but sometimes you forget that emotions are patterns too. This perspective stopped Olivia short. She pulled out her notebook again. Emotional patterns in family dynamics. Mom's anxiety manifests as overinvolvement. Dad's pride shows through criticism. Emma's rebellion against traditional expectations. My withdrawal when overwhelmed. You're right, she said slowly. These aren't random emotional reactions. They're predictable responses based on established patterns. That evening, instead of heading home, Olivia went to the daily grind. Sarah was training another new barista, but this time Olivia noticed something different about her approach. You've changed your training style, Olivia observed when Sarah brought her usual order. Sarah smiled. You noticed? Yes, after the last trainee, I realized I needed to adjust for emotional comfort before focusing on technical skills. People learn better when they feel secure. This insight hit home. Olivia had been approaching relationships like technical problems to solve, but perhaps she needed to establish emotional security first. She began a new analysis. Hypothesis. Emotional security creates foundation for effective interaction. Test case. Upcoming family dinner. Approach. 1. Acknowledge emotions, mine and others. 2. Create safety before seeking connection. 3. Allow for imperfect interactions. 4. Focus on patterns rather than individual incidents. Sunday arrived sooner than she felt ready for. Standing at her parents' front door, Olivia took a deep breath and reviewed her notes one last time before ringing the bell. Her mother opened the door, anxiety and hope warring in her expression. Olivia, you're early. Instead of her usual quick entrance, Olivia paused. She observed her mother's body language, the slightly wrung hands, the nervous smile, and recognized the emotional pattern. Following her new hypothesis, she did something unexpected. She hugged her mother. Happy to be here, Mom, she said softly, feeling her mother's surprise and then relief in the way she relaxed into the embrace. Inside, the house was alive with preparation chaos. Emma was already there with her new boyfriend, Jack, helping in the kitchen. Her father sat in his usual chair, pretending to read the newspaper while watching everyone else. Olivia began applying her observation skills, but this time with a focus on emotional patterns. Emma and Jack shared glances indicating private jokes, protective body language when near each other. Emma's increased confidence in family setting. Jack's careful attention to family dynamics. Her father, proud smile poorly hidden behind newspaper. Occasional gruff comments masking emotion. Careful observation of his children's happiness. Her mother, fluttering between tasks. Seeking approval through service. lighting up at small appreciations. Instead of retreating to her usual corner, Olivia moved into the kitchen. "Can I help?" she asked, noting how her mother's shoulders relaxed slightly at the offer. As they worked together, Olivia tested her new approach. When her mother made a nervous comment about Emma's boyfriend's tattoos, instead of arguing or withdrawing, Olivia acknowledged the emotion beneath the criticism. "It's different from what you expected for Emma," she said gently. "But look how happy she is, Mom. That's what you really wanted for her, right?" Her mother paused, actually looking at Emma and Jack together. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, it is." Throughout dinner, Olivia continued her experiment in emotional pattern recognition. When her father made a comment about her work, all that computer stuff, never understood the appeal. She heard the underlying message. "I wish I could connect with what matters to you." "Actually, Dad," she said, "I've been using my analytical skills in a new way lately. Want to hear about it?" His surprise and genuine interest when she explained her social observation project created a moment of connection she hadn't expected. Later, helping with dishes, Emma nudged her sister. "You're different today," she observed. "More present, less analytical, but somehow more understanding." Olivia considered this. "I'm still analyzing," she admitted, "but I'm including emotions in the data set now. It changes the calculations." Emma laughed. "Only you would say it that way. But it works. You know what else I noticed? Mom and Dad are different around you too. Less anxious, more real." That night, back home, Olivia updated her notebook. Results of emotional integration experiment. 1. Acknowledging emotions reduces defensive responses. 2. Understanding patterns helps predict and prevent conflicts. 3. Creating emotional safety enables deeper connection. 4. Analysis and emotion can work together rather than oppose each other. New hypothesis. Emotional intelligence isn't about abandoning analysis. It's about expanding what we analyze to include feelings as valid data points. She closed her notebook, feeling tired but satisfied. The evening hadn't been perfect. There had been moments of tension, old patterns threatening to resurface. But something had shifted. By including emotions in her analysis rather than trying to factor them out, she had found a new way to navigate complex relationships. Her phone buzzed, a text from Emma. "Proud of you, sis. Thanks for making tonight easier for everyone." Olivia smiled, adding one more note to her journal. Final observation. Sometimes the most valuable data comes not from what we analyze, but from what we allow ourselves to feel. Chapter 6. Building Deeper Connections Beyond the Surface Code. The conference room buzzed with pre-meeting chatter, but Olivia's attention was fixed on her newest project, mapping the invisible connections between her colleagues. Over the past few months, she had started noticing patterns that went far beyond simple workplace interactions. In her notebook, she sketched a web of relationships. Network analysis. Rachel, project manager. Marcus, team lead, mutual respect, shared vision. Tom, accounting. Jessica, reception, daily coffee ritual, friendship. Sarah, HR. Chun, IT, mentorship dynamic. Lisa, marketing. James, development, tension. Past project conflicts. "What's that you're working on?" Rachel asked, sliding into the seat beside her. Instead of quickly closing her notebook as she once would have, Olivia shared her observations. "I'm mapping relationship dynamics," she explained. "It helps me understand how the team really works." Rachel leaned in, intrigued. "This is fascinating. You see all this just by watching us?" "It's like debugging code," Olivia said. "Every interaction is a line of social code that either runs smoothly or throws errors. The trick is figuring out why." As the meeting began, Olivia noticed something she wouldn't have caught months ago. Subtle shifts in energy when certain people spoke, micro-expressions that revealed deeper stories beneath professional facades. She added to her notes. Hypothesis. Deeper connections form when we recognize and respond to unspoken needs. Professional validation. Personal understanding. Safe space for vulnerability. Genuine recognition. After the meeting, Lisa from marketing lingered, seemingly wanting to talk. Normally, Olivia would have hurried back to her desk, but her recent observations had shown her that these moments often held opportunities for meaningful connection. "Everything okay?" she asked, gathering her things slowly. Lisa hesitated. "Actually, I could use some advice. You're good at seeing patterns, and I'm struggling with a team dynamic issue." Over coffee, Lisa shared her challenges working with the development team. As she listened, Olivia realized she was simultaneously analyzing the situation and empathizing with Lisa's frustration, skills that once seemed at odds now working in harmony. "It's like there's a translation gap," Lisa said, stirring her coffee absently. "We speak different languages." Olivia nodded, recalling her own breakthroughs in cross-department communication. "What if we created a shared vocabulary? Not just technical terms, but a way to express needs and concerns that both teams understand." As they brainstormed solutions, Olivia noticed something shifting in their interaction. They weren't just colleagues discussing a work problem. They were forming a genuine connection based on mutual understanding and shared problem-solving. That evening at the daily grind, Olivia reflected on this development. Deeper connection analysis. 1. Surface level, professional courtesy, basic workplace interaction. 2. Middle layer, shared experiences, mutual support. 3. Deep level, trust, vulnerability, genuine understanding. Required elements. Active presence in key moments. Recognition of opportunities for connection. Willingness to share personal insights. Balance between analysis and intuition. Sarah appeared with a fresh cup of tea. "You look deep in thought," she observed. "I'm realizing something about connections," Olivia replied. "They're not just about successful social interactions. They're about creating spaces where people feel seen and understood." Sarah settled into the chair across from her. "You know, I've watched you change over these past months. You're still analyzing everything. That's just who you are. But now you're using that analysis to build bridges instead of walls." This observation sparked a new line of thinking. Olivia had been so focused on understanding others that she hadn't fully recognized her own transformation. She turned to a fresh page. Personal growth patterns. Increased comfort with uncertainty. Better balance of logic and emotion. More authentic self-expression. Deeper understanding of human connections. The next day, she decided to test her theories about deeper connections in a challenging context. Lunch with Emma and their mother. Historical data suggested this combination often led to tension, but Olivia now had new tools at her disposal. At the restaurant, instead of her usual role as silent observer, she actively engaged in creating a different dynamic. When Emma mentioned her art gallery struggles, Olivia noticed their mother's hands tightening on her napkin, a sign of suppressed worry. Instead of letting the moment pass, she bridged the gap. "Emma's really innovative in how she's handling these challenges," she offered. "Just like you were, Mom, when you started your business." The comparison created an unexpected moment of connection between mother and daughter. Emma looked surprised and thoughtful. Their mother relaxed, sharing stories about her early career struggles that neither daughter had heard before. Olivia documented the interaction later. Breakthrough moment. Identified emotional undercurrent. Found common ground. Created space for vulnerability. Facilitated mutual understanding. As the weeks passed, Olivia found herself applying these principles in various contexts. At work, she became known as someone who could not only solve technical problems, but also understand the human elements involved. Her colleagues began seeking her out not just for her analytical skills, but for her insights into team dynamics. During a particularly challenging project, she noticed tensions rising between departments. Instead of focusing solely on the technical issues, she organized a workshop where team members could share their perspectives and concerns. The result was not just better communication, but stronger relationships built on mutual understanding. One evening, as she updated her observation notebook, Olivia realized she needed a new category. Connection levels. Level 1. Surface interaction. Basic courtesy. Professional requirements. Social conventions. Level 2. Mutual understanding. Shared experiences. Recognition of needs. Support in challenges. Level 3. Deep connection. Authentic self-expression. Trust and vulnerability. Genuine care and investment. Current status. Moving between levels with increasing fluidity. Marcus stopped by her desk the next day, noting the positive changes in team dynamics. "You've created something remarkable here," he said. "People feel understood and valued. That's rare in a corporate environment." Olivia smiled, thinking of how far she'd come from her initial attempts to decode human interaction. "I've learned that deep connections aren't about perfect understanding or flawless communication. They're about creating spaces where people feel safe to be themselves, complexity, contradictions, and all." She added one final note to her journal that evening. Ultimate discovery. The deepest connections form not when we analyze perfectly, but when we use our understanding to create spaces where both logic and emotion can exist together, where both strength and vulnerability are welcomed, and where each person feels truly seen and valued for who they are. Chapter 7. Conflict Resolution Through Critical Thinking. Finding Harmony in Discord. Olivia recognized the signs of impending conflict before anyone else in the meeting room. Her months of studying human interaction had attuned her to subtle signals. Tom from development's increasingly tight jaw, Lisa from marketing's rapid pen tapping, and Rachel's slightly higher-pitched voice as she tried to maintain calm. The project deadline had been moved up by 3 weeks, and the tension was palpable. Opening her notebook discreetly, she began documenting. Conflict analysis, real-time observation, primary stressors, compressed timeline, resource competition, departmental priorities clashing, historical friction points activating. As voices began to rise, Olivia found herself in an unusual position. Previously, she would have retreated into silence, focusing on her own tasks while letting others handle the emotional aspects of team conflict. But now she saw something different, patterns she could understand and potentially influence. "Before we go further," she spoke up, surprising herself and others, "could we map out exactly what each department needs to accomplish in this shortened timeline?" The room quieted. She stood and walked to the whiteboard, marker in hand. "Let's analyze this systematically." Over the next 30 minutes, she guided the team through a structured breakdown of their challenges. On the board, she created columns: marketing needs, development requirements, timeline constraints, shared goals. As people contributed, she noticed the energy in the room shifting. The act of organizing their concerns into visible patterns helped move them from emotional reactions to problem-solving mode. "Look at this," she said, stepping back. "We have 3 major points of tension, but also 5 areas of alignment. What if we focused on those overlaps first?" Tom's shoulders relaxed slightly. Lisa stopped tapping her pen. Rachel leaned forward with renewed interest. Later that evening at the daily grind, Olivia analyzed the interaction. Conflict resolution patterns. 1. Initial phase. Emotional tension builds. Positions become entrenched. Communication deteriorates. 2. Intervention point. Create structure for discussion. Make patterns visible. Find common ground. 3. Resolution phase. Build from areas of agreement. Address specific pain points. Establish new patterns. Sarah brought over her usual order, noting her intense focus. "Solving world peace," she joked. "Just trying to understand why some conflicts escalate while others resolve," Olivia replied. "Today I saw how making patterns visible can help people step back from emotional reactions. That's because you gave them something to analyze together instead of argue about," Sarah observed. "You turned adversaries into collaborators." This insight led Olivia to a new page in her notebook. Hypothesis. Conflict often escalates when people feel unseen or unheard. Resolution becomes possible when perspectives are acknowledged, patterns are recognized, common goals are identified, collaboration replaces competition. The next day, she had an opportunity to test this theory in a more personal context. Emma called, clearly upset about their parents' reaction to her gallery's new direction. "They just don't understand," Emma exclaimed. "Dad keeps talking about practical business decisions, and Mom's making those comments about stable career choices." Instead of her usual response of logical suggestions or quiet listening, Olivia applied her conflict resolution framework. "Can you help me understand exactly what happened?" she asked, taking notes as Emma spoke. She identified key patterns: parents' concerns, financial stability, traditional business metrics, fear for daughter's security. Emma's position: artistic integrity, innovation necessary. Personal fulfillment. Olivia said carefully, this reminds me of the conflict I just handled at work. Everyone had valid concerns, but they were speaking different languages. What do you mean? Emma asked, curiosity tempering her frustration. Well, when Dad talks about practical business decisions, he's really expressing concern for your well-being. And when you talk about artistic integrity, you're sharing your passion for meaningful work. You're both talking about value, just defining it differently. There was a long pause on the phone. That actually makes sense, Emma said slowly. So how do I handle this? Together, they developed a strategy for Emma's next conversation with their parents, focusing on acknowledging their concerns, translating artistic goals into business terms, finding common ground in shared values, creating space for mutual understanding. A week later, Emma reported back, actually worked. I showed them my business plan alongside my artistic vision. Dad still had concerns, but he really listened. Mom even offered to help with networking. Olivia added this success to her growing database of conflict resolution strategies. Key learning. Effective conflict resolution requires 1. Pattern recognition. Identify recurring themes. Understand emotional triggers. Map communication styles. 2. Translation. Bridge different perspectives. Find shared vocabulary. Connect disparate viewpoints. 3. Integration. Build on common ground. Create new patterns. Establish sustainable solutions. Her skills were tested again when a major project crisis erupted at work. Two key team members were barely speaking to each other, threatening the project's timeline. Instead of avoiding the situation, Olivia decided to address it directly. She invited both parties to what she called a pattern mapping session, explaining her approach. Think of this like debugging code, she told them. When there's a conflict in the program, we don't blame the code. We look for the pattern that's creating the error. Using this framework, they identified communication breakdowns, misaligned expectations, unacknowledged contributions, shared frustrations with system constraints. By the end of the session, not only had they resolved their immediate conflicts, but they had also created new patterns for future collaboration. That evening, updating her conflict resolution notes, Olivia realized something profound. Final insight: conflict itself isn't the problem. It's a signal pointing to patterns that need attention. When we approach it with curiosity rather than fear, conflict becomes an opportunity for deeper understanding, pattern improvement, stronger connections, system optimization. She closed her notebook, feeling satisfied with her progress. The next day would undoubtedly bring new challenges, new conflicts to resolve. But now she had a framework for approaching them, one that honored both the logical and emotional aspects of human interaction. Chapter 8. Professional Relationships, the Network Effect. The conference center lobby hummed with conversation as professionals from across the industry gathered for the annual Tech Innovation Summit. Olivia stood slightly apart from the crowd, her tablet in hand, observing the intricate dance of networking unfolding before her. In previous years, she would have found an excuse to skip this event or hidden behind her laptop, focusing solely on the technical presentations. But today, she had a different approach. Professional network analysis. Current status. Internal connections growing. External connections limited. Industry visibility minimal. Objective: build authentic professional relationships while maintaining analytical integrity. She noticed Marcus across the room, effortlessly moving between groups, connecting people with similar interests. Even from a distance, she could see the patterns in his networking style. Genuine interest in others' work. Strategic introductions. Follow-up questions that deepened engagement. Natural transitions between conversations. Analyzing the competition, a voice asked beside her. Olivia turned to find Sarah, her HR director, smiling knowingly. Not competition, Olivia replied, data collection. Marcus has an interesting pattern of creating connection points between people. And what patterns have you identified? Sarah asked, genuinely curious. Olivia shared her observations, and to her surprise, Sarah pulled out her own notebook. This is fascinating, she said. You see networking as a system of interconnected nodes, don't you? For the next few minutes, they discussed different approaches to professional relationship building. Sarah shared her experience while Olivia contributed her analytical insights. Their conversation attracted others, and soon they had a small group engaged in discussing innovative approaches to professional development. Later, Olivia updated her notes. Unexpected discovery. Authentic analysis of professional relationships can itself become a connection point. People are interested in understanding patterns that affect their careers. During the lunch break, she decided to test this theory. Instead of sitting alone, she joined a table where people were discussing challenges in cross-team collaboration. Drawing from her recent experiences, she shared her framework for mapping team dynamics. "That's brilliant," said a woman named Jennifer, a technical director from another company. "Would you be interested in speaking about this at our leadership forum next month?" Olivia felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, but remembered her commitment to growth. "I'd like to learn more about it," she replied, opening a new channel for professional connection. Throughout the day, she continued to observe and engage, noting successful patterns. Professional relationship building. 1. Knowledge exchange. Share insights openly. Ask thoughtful questions. Connect ideas across disciplines. 2. Value creation. Identify mutual benefits. Offer genuine assistance. Build on shared interests. 3. Follow-up strategy. Document key conversations. Plan specific actions. Maintain meaningful contact. The real breakthrough came during the afternoon panel discussion. When the topic turned to improving team communication, Olivia found herself raising her hand to share her experience with pattern mapping and conflict resolution. The response was immediate and positive. Several people approached her afterward, eager to learn more about her methods. She noticed Marcus watching with approval as she handled these interactions with growing confidence. "You've created quite a buzz," he said later, as they debriefed over coffee. "People are calling you the pattern whisperer." Olivia laughed, but then grew thoughtful. "It's strange. I always thought I needed to become more normal to succeed professionally. But it turns out my analytical approach, when applied to relationships, is actually valuable." "More than valuable," Marcus corrected. "It's unique. You're not just building a network. You're creating a new way of understanding professional relationships." That evening, back at her hotel room, Olivia mapped out her growing professional network. Network growth analysis. Direct connections. Jennifer, tech director. Leadership forum opportunity. David, project manager. Potential collaboration. Maya, systems analyst, shared interest in pattern mapping. Robert, HR consultant, mentorship possibility. Secondary connections. Their networks become accessible through authentic engagement. Each connection multiplies potential opportunities. Value flows in multiple directions. The next morning, during the closing sessions, Olivia found herself approached by various professionals seeking her insight. She realized she had created something unexpected, a reputation as someone who could bridge the gap between technical expertise and human dynamics. In her final conference notes, she wrote, "Professional relationship insights. 1. Authenticity is an asset. Unique perspectives create value. Technical skills can enhance relationship building. Being different can be a strength. 2. Network effects are multiplicative. Each genuine connection opens new possibilities. Value creation attracts further opportunities. Reputation grows through consistent authenticity. 3. Balance is crucial. Maintain analytical integrity while building relationships. Combine technical and interpersonal skills. Create sustainable connection patterns." As she packed for her return flight, Olivia received an email from Jennifer with details about the leadership forum. Another message came from Sarah, proposing a formal role for Olivia in developing team dynamics training for the company. She opened her notebook one last time. Final conference analysis. Initial objective: build professional network. Actual outcome: created new framework for professional relationship building. Unexpected result: discovery that analytical skills, properly applied, can enhance rather than hinder professional growth. Next steps: develop presentation for leadership forum. Create formal documentation of relationship mapping methods. Explore opportunities for broader impact. Maintain authenticity while expanding influence. On the flight home, Olivia reflected on how far she'd come from the person who once dreaded professional networking events. She had discovered that true professional relationships weren't about performing or pretending. They were about finding authentic ways to create value for others while remaining true to oneself. Chapter 9. Personal Growth and Self-Analysis, the Internal Algorithm. The morning light filtered through Olivia's apartment windows as she sat cross-legged on her couch, surrounded by notebooks from the past 6 months. Her coffee grew cold as she immersed herself in reviewing her journey, seeing patterns she hadn't noticed while living them. Self-Analysis Project. Timeline Review. Month 1. Basic Social Observation. Month 2. Pattern Recognition in Interactions. Month 3. Emotional Integration Begins. Month 4. Conflict Resolution Development. Month 5. Professional Relationship Growth. Month 6. System Integration and Refinement. Current Status. Need to understand personal growth patterns. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Brunch? I want to hear about your conference. As Olivia typed her reply, she realized how different she felt about social invitations now. The automatic anxiety had been replaced by genuine interest. She added to her notes, personal change indicators, reduced social anxiety, increased genuine engagement, better emotional awareness, more authentic self-expression. At the cafe, Emma noticed the difference immediately. There's something different about you, she said, studying her sister's face. You're more present? No, that's not quite it. More comfortable in your own skin. Olivia shared her morning's self-analysis project. I've been mapping my personal growth patterns. It's fascinating to see how small changes led to larger transformations. Only you would create a spreadsheet for personal growth. Emma laughed, but her eyes were warm. Though I have to admit, your method works. You're not just analyzing life anymore. You're living it while understanding it. This observation struck Olivia deeply. Back home, she opened a new page. Growth Pattern Analysis. Phase 1. Observation. External focus. Data collection. Pattern recognition. Phase 2. Integration. Connecting analysis with emotion. Balancing logic and intuition. Building authentic relationships. Phase 3. Transformation. Living while analyzing. Natural integration of skills. Authentic self-expression. Later that week, during her regular coffee stop at the Daily Grind, Sarah noticed Olivia's intense focus on her notebook. Deep thoughts? She asked, sliding an extra cookie onto Olivia's saucer. I'm trying to understand my own growth algorithm, Olivia replied, then laughed at how that sounded. I'm analyzing how I've changed. Sarah pulled up a chair during her break. Tell me more. Olivia shared her observations about her transformation, and Sarah listened thoughtfully. You know what's interesting? She said finally. You're not just changing. You're creating a framework for personal growth that others might be able to use. This perspective opened a new line of thinking. Olivia began mapping out a more structured approach. Personal growth framework. 1. Self-assessment. Current patterns. Emotional responses. Interaction styles. Growth objectives. 2. Pattern analysis. Identify recurring themes. Understand triggers. Map success patterns. Note growth opportunities. 3. Strategic implementation. Test new approaches. Document results. Adjust methods. Maintain authenticity. The next day at work, Olivia had an opportunity to test this framework when faced with a challenging situation. A junior team member came to her, clearly struggling with confidence issues in team meetings. Instead of just offering advice, Olivia shared her own journey. I used to analyze everything from a distance, she explained. But I've learned that understanding patterns can actually help us engage more authentically. Together, they mapped out the junior colleagues' interaction patterns and developed strategies for growth. As they worked, Olivia realized she was creating something new, a blend of analytical thinking and emotional intelligence that could help others navigate their own growth. That evening, she added to her framework. Growth catalysts. 1. Self-awareness. Regular reflection. Pattern recognition. Emotional honesty. Progress tracking. 2. Authentic action. Calculated risks. Consistent practice. Feedback integration. Adjustment capability. 3. Connection development. Shared learning. mutual support, community building, knowledge transfer. As weeks passed, Olivia found herself naturally applying these principles in various contexts. During a team development workshop, she shared her approach to personal growth, combining analytical frameworks with emotional intelligence. The response was overwhelming. Colleagues began seeking her out for guidance, not just on technical issues, but on personal development challenges. She found herself creating customized frameworks for different individuals, helping them find their own balance between analysis and growth. One evening, reviewing her latest notes, Olivia had a revelation. Key discovery: personal growth isn't about changing who you are. It's about becoming more fully yourself through understanding and intentional development. Growth integration model. Use natural strengths, analysis, pattern recognition. Apply them to new areas: emotional intelligence, relationships. Create unique synthesis, personal style of growth. Share insights with others, community impact. As she continued to develop this framework, Olivia noticed something remarkable. The more she understood her own patterns, the better she became at helping others understand theirs. She was creating a ripple effect of growth and understanding that extended far beyond her initial goals. In her final entry for the day, she wrote, Ultimate growth pattern. 1. Understand yourself deeply. 2. Use your natural strengths. 3. Develop authentic connections. 4. Create positive impact. 5. Continue growing while helping others grow. Next phase. Explore how this framework can benefit others while maintaining personal growth momentum. Looking up from her notebook, Olivia caught her reflection in the window. The person looking back at her was both familiar and new. Someone who had learned to use her analytical nature not as a barrier, but as a bridge to deeper understanding and connection. Chapter 10. Integration and Balance. The Complete Algorithm. Olivia stared at the email on her screen, her heart racing despite her attempts to remain analytical. Department restructuring, team-led position. Dear Olivia, following your remarkable progress and contributions, we would like to discuss your potential role in leading the newly formed integration team. The irony wasn't lost on her. 6 months ago, she had been passed over for a leadership position due to concerns about her people skills. Now, after months of studying human interaction and developing her own approach to relationships, she was being offered an even more significant role. Opening her notebook, she began her familiar pattern analysis. Situation assessment. Current position, senior analyst. Proposed role, integration team lead. Key changes: increased people management, cross-departmental coordination, strategic planning responsibility, cultural development leadership. As she documented her thoughts, Marcus appeared at her desk, grinning. I heard the news. Though I can't say I'm surprised. You've basically been doing the job unofficially for months. Have I? Olivia asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. Think about it, he said, pulling up a chair. The conflict resolution framework you developed, the team dynamics mapping, the way you've been bridging technical and interpersonal gaps. You've created something unique here. That evening at the daily grind, Olivia spread out her notebooks from the past 6 months, trying to see the larger pattern. Sarah brought her usual order and settled in for what had become their regular evening chat. You're going to take it, right? Sarah asked, having heard about the promotion. I'm analyzing the patterns, Olivia replied, gesturing to her notes. It's a big shift. Show me, Sarah said, genuinely interested in Olivia's process. Olivia began mapping out her integrated approach. Leadership Integration Framework. 1. Technical excellence. Strong analytical foundation. Pattern recognition skills. Problem-solving ability. System thinking. 2. Emotional intelligence. Pattern-based empathy. Structured relationship building. Systematic understanding of emotions. Data-driven people skills. 3. Communication bridge. Technical emotional translation. Pattern-based conflict resolution. Structured relationship development. Systematic team building. As she wrote, a larger pattern emerged. She wasn't just combining technical and interpersonal skills. She was creating a new approach to leadership entirely. The next day, Olivia called a meeting with her potential future team. Instead of just discussing the transition, she decided to demonstrate her integrated approach. She began by mapping out team dynamics on the whiteboard, using her now familiar pattern recognition system. But this time, she added a new layer: emotional flow charts that showed how different working styles and personalities could complement each other. What we're creating, she explained, isn't just a new department. We're developing a new way of working that honors both analytical precision and human connection. The room was silent for a moment before ideas started flowing. Team members began adding to her diagrams, combining technical insights with interpersonal observations. The energy was electric. That evening, Olivia updated her framework. Integration success patterns. 1. Honor both sides. Analytical rigor. Emotional wisdom. Technical excellence. Human connection. 2. Create new patterns. Hybrid approaches. Innovative solutions. Combined methodologies. Integrated systems. 3. Build sustainable growth. Team development. Individual growth. System improvement. Cultural evolution. As she prepared for her final interview for the position, Olivia reflected on how far she'd come. She wasn't just applying for a job. She was stepping into a role that would allow her to share her integrated approach with others. During the interview, instead of trying to prove she had overcome her analytical nature, she demonstrated how she had transformed it into a strength. She showed how her pattern recognition skills enhanced rather than hindered her leadership abilities. What's fascinating, she explained to the panel, is that when we stop seeing technical and interpersonal skills as opposing forces, we can create something more powerful than either alone. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Not only was she offered the position, but she was also asked to develop a training program to share her approach across the company. In her notebook that night, she wrote, "Final integration analysis. Success isn't about changing who you are. It's about understanding your natural patterns, developing them intentionally, applying them authentically, sharing them generously. Leadership through integration. Use analytical skills to understand people. Apply emotional intelligence to system design. Create frameworks that honor both. Build cultures that embrace complexity." As she closed her notebook, Olivia realized something profound. She had started this journey trying to fix what she saw as a weakness: her analytical approach to relationships. Instead, she had discovered that this very quality, when properly developed and integrated, was her greatest strength. Her phone buzzed with messages of congratulations from Emma, her parents, and various team members. Each message represented a relationship that had grown and deepened through her integrated approach to understanding human connection. In her final entry for the day, she wrote, "The complete algorithm. Input: your authentic self. Process: intentional growth and integration. Output: enhanced connections and impact. Result: a life that honors both logic and emotion, analysis and intuition, systems and people." Next phase: share this algorithm with others, helping them find their own path to integration and growth. Looking up from her notebook, Olivia smiled at her reflection in the cafe window. The person looking back at her was whole, not despite her analytical nature, but because of how she had learned to use it to create deeper, more meaningful connections with others. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now she had both the tools and the understanding to move forward, helping others while continuing to grow herself. Epilogue: the evolving algorithm. 1 year later, Olivia sat in her new office, surrounded by both familiar and unfamiliar items. Her collection of notebooks had grown, now accompanied by thank you cards from team members and printed copies of her integration framework that other departments had started using. The whiteboard walls were covered with her characteristic pattern mapping diagrams, but they now included collaborative additions from her team. Opening her original notebook from that first coffee shop morning, she smiled at her early attempts to decode human interaction. How far she had come from thinking she needed to choose between being analytical and being connected. The morning sun streamed through her office windows as she began her daily pattern review. 1 year analysis. Team status. Productivity up 47%. Improved cross-department collaboration. Higher employee satisfaction scores. Innovative problem-solving approaches. Personal growth. Leadership style established. Relationships deepened. New patterns discovered. Continuing evolution. A knock at her door interrupted her writing. It was Marcus, carrying 2 cups from the daily grind. "Sarah said you'd be doing your morning analysis," he said, placing her usual order on her desk. "Thought you might want your favorite thinking fuel. Analyzing patterns in my thoughtfulness?" Olivia teased, accepting the coffee. "Learning from the master," he replied with a grin. "Your methods are catching on. Did you know HR is using your relationship mapping framework for team building now?" She nodded, adding another note. Pattern spread. Organic adoption of methods. Natural integration in various departments. Adaptation to different contexts. Evolution through collective input. Later that day, during a team meeting, Olivia watched her integrated approach in action. Team members naturally combined technical analysis with emotional intelligence, using her frameworks while adding their own innovations. The room hummed with the energy of people who felt understood and valued for both their analytical and emotional contributions. That evening, at her regular catch-up dinner with Emma, her sister noticed something new. "You're not writing everything down anymore," Emma observed. "Yet you seem to be tracking even more than before." Olivia considered this. "The patterns have become more natural," she explained. "I'm still analyzing, but it's integrated into how I experience life now, not separate from it." At home, she made one final entry in her notebook. Final reflection. The journey never really ends. Each pattern leads to new discoveries. Each connection opens new possibilities for growth. The key isn't to perfect the algorithm, but to keep refining it, allowing it to evolve with each new experience and insight. Lessons learned. 1. True growth comes from integration, not transformation. 2. Analytical skills can enhance rather than hinder connection. 3. Authentic patterns create sustainable relationships. 4. Personal style becomes professional strength. 5. Connection happens through understanding, not changing. Future directions. Continue developing integrated approaches. Share methodologies while encouraging innovation. Build frameworks that help others find their path. Maintain balance between analysis and intuition. Remember that the best patterns are those that allow for growth and change. As she closed her notebook, Olivia's phone lit up with a message from a team member sharing a successful application of her framework in a challenging situation. Another notification showed an email from a different company requesting her insights on team integration. The patterns were spreading, evolving, creating new connections and possibilities. And Olivia, no longer torn between her analytical nature and her desire for connection, was ready for whatever new patterns emerged. Her journey had taught her that the most beautiful algorithms are those that remain open to modification, that the strongest connections come from authentic expression of who we are, and that the best patterns are those that leave room for growth. Looking out her window at the city lights, Olivia smiled. She had started this journey trying to solve what she thought was a problem, her analytical approach to life. Instead, she had discovered that this very quality, when properly understood and applied, was the key to creating deeper, more meaningful connections with others. The algorithm would continue to evolve, new patterns would emerge, and fresh challenges would arise. But now she had the tools, understanding, and confidence to face them, not by changing who she was, but by being more fully herself. And in the end, that was the most important pattern of all. The end.